All right, good evening, everyone. I think we're going to get underway. If you would like to take your seat. Okay. So good evening, everyone. My name is Elizabeth O'Neill. I'm the Executive Director of the Chicago Booth Rothman London campus. And I'm delighted to welcome you all this evening to our session, The State of the Global Economy and Choices Facing Policymakers, featuring our current Rothman faculty in residence, Professor Anil Kashyap, in conversation with the editor-in-chief of The Economist, Zanny, Minton, Beddoes. So tonight's session is part of a year-long series of global events celebrating Chicago Booth's 125th anniversary. And we're really delighted to be closing out a spectacular year of celebration featuring such a renowned global economics expert in conversation with one of Booth's most distinguished senior faculty members. Before we introduce the speakers, if you would allow me just to share a few words about both the campus and Chicago Booth and our activities here in London. I promise to keep it brief so that we can get on to the main event. But the campus here, for those of you less familiar with our work, this is the main academic home for our Executive MBA program. They're in session this week, so there are many Executive MBA students in the audience this evening. It also supports an expanding portfolio of executive education programs, that's custom programs for organizations, as well as open enrollment programs. And it's in where our University of Chicago undergraduate study abroad students find a home when they're studying here in London as part of their degree programs. We also hope some of you might have heard that we have just launched a Master in Management program. We're very excited about that. And we are hoping that there is a global component of that in the future that will feature both our London and Hong Kong campuses. So that is a TBD and watch this space. And in addition to that core academic opportunity or academic activity here, of course, the campus is a regional hub for our alumni community, including alumni events and different initiatives. And this beautiful state-of-the-art facility, we also offer this as a conference center. So there are external organizations and alumni organizations who have taken advantage of this gorgeous space and space that you'll see throughout the building afterwards at the reception. Last but not least, of course, we convene an ongoing series of public lectures featuring both the cutting-edge faculty research that we have at Chicago Booth, as well as thought-provoking conversations with public intellectuals. And we hope this is very much pure Chicago style, that these public lectures are a forum for discussion and debate on the big ideas and the emerging trends and those issues shaping the global landscape. And so to kick off tonight's public lecture, as we celebrate 125 years of ideas, of innovation, and of impact at Chicago Booth, it's my pleasure to introduce Professor Anil Kashyap, who will then introduce our special guest. So Anil Kashyap is the Stevens Distinguished Service Professor of Economics and Finance at Chicago Booth. His research focuses in many areas. They include banking, business cycles, corporate finance, financial regulation, monetary policy, and price setting. And he's the co-director, as some of you might be familiar with, the Kent Clark Center on Global Markets at Chicago Booth. Anil is the co-director for that center. He has advised numerous governments and international organizations. The list is quite long, but a few include the Cabinet Office of the Japanese Prime Minister, the European Central Bank, the IMF, US Congressional Budget Office, Federal Reserve Banks, Chicago and New York, and for quite a long stint here in the UK, 2016 to 2022, he was an external member of the Bank of England's Financial Policy Committee. Many awards on a global basis, but the one that I want to give Anil a shout out for that was very recent was an award here in the UK of the Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, a CBE. Those of you who are local will understand how significant that is. Awarded from His Majesty the King in recognition of Professor Kashyap's services to the British economy. And then I would certainly be remiss, my last remark here before turning it over, if I didn't mention that tonight of all nights where we're celebrating our 125th and closing out that year, Professor Kashyap has been really instrumental and visionary in the programming for that 125th year. So if you're a student or an alumni and you've taken advantage of some of the amazing things that we've done to celebrate globally, really that was at the leadership of Professor Kashyap and one of his co-faculty directors. So we're very grateful for that, the role that he's played. With that, I'm very pleased to hand it over to Anil, who will introduce our special guest and take it from there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Elizabeth. And thank you all for coming. We're delighted tonight to have my friend Zanny Minton Beddoes, who's the editor-in-chief of The Economist. I'm going to read you some of her bio, but I think I should start by saying she's one of the leading public intellectuals that makes economics accessible and available to people. And you'll see why. She's such a fantastic speaker in a moment. But before becoming editor-in-chief, she was the business affairs editor responsible for the newspaper's coverage of business, finance, and science. Prior to that, she was the Economist's economics editor, overseeing the newspaper's global economics coverage from her base in Washington, D.C. Before moving to D.C. in April of 1996, she was the Economist's emerging market correspondent based in London, and she's traveled extensively in Latin America and Eastern Europe, writing editorials and country analyses. She's also written surveys on the world economy, Latin America, finance, global finance, and Central Asia. She joined The Economist in 1994 after spending 2 years at the IMF, where she worked on macroeconomic adjustment programs in Africa and the transition economies of Eastern Europe. Long ago and far away in a different life, when Jeff Sachs used to advise government, she was part of the team that he took to Poland to try to advise the Minister of Finance in Poland. That was a big deal at the time, I remember. She's written extensively about international financial issues, including the enlargement of the European Union, the future of International Monetary Fund, and economic reform in emerging economies. She's published in Foreign Affairs and Foreign Policy, contributing chapters to several conference volumes, and in 1997, edited Emerging Asia, a book on the future of emerging markets in Asia that was published by the Asian Development Bank. In May of 1998, she testified before Congress on the introduction of the euro, and you'll probably see her on TV regularly. She's on the BBC, MSNBC, PBS, NPR, CNN, and CNBC. That's just a partial list, I'm sure. She holds degrees from Oxford and Harvard. So please join me in welcoming Zanny Minton Beddoes. All right, so the plan for tonight is we're going to do kind of a moderated conversation, cover, I think, some of the most obvious questions that would come up about what's going on in the world economy these days. And then we'll talk about some more medium-term issues. And I'll reserve some time at the end for questions. So there'll be people coming around with mics when we get to that point. So let's start maybe with your outlook for the U.S. economy. I mean, do you think they'll dodge a recession? And if that can be avoided, is the Fed done? Okay.
Error. Here we go. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. And great to help you celebrate 125 years. I feel that we're slightly older. We've just celebrated our 180th, The Economist. But I think longevity in both our institutions is something to be celebrated. I have to say, I feel a little intimidated by this. Anil sent me a list of topic heads, and I felt like I was entering a Viva here. The kind of, there's about 15 things he wanted to hit. So what was the first one? The U.S. economy. Is it going to dodge it? Well, firstly, I think we all should be pretty humble about prognosticating about the US economy. And this time a year ago, every single person I talked to, there was definitely going to be a recession. You couldn't turn on CNBC. The odds of recession are, 80% or whatever it was. Everyone predicted a recession. Everyone was wrong. So I think it's kind of, suitably humbling for anybody. So therefore take whatever I say with a large grain of salt. I have learned that it is a mistake to bet against the US economy. Over whatever it is now, 25 years of looking at the US economy, it invariably doesn't necessarily outperform in GDP terms, but the US consumer was always stronger than I anticipate the US consumer to be. And I suspect that is likely to happen next year. I think next year is going to be almost certainly, we're not going to see 4.9% that we saw in the third quarter again. I think it will be slower growth. I suspect the consequences of the fiscal tightening will become more apparent, particularly we're going to have some reckoning in private credit markets. We're going to see some impact. The kind of crazy valuations in private markets that haven't really adjusted are going to have to adjust. That is going to have a knock-on effect. Tail risk of all kinds of nasty things, but sort of non-tail risk, I think it will have an impact probably on some areas of the corporate sector. It'll have an impact on investment. The consumer, I think, will, it's real wage growth is actually now pretty strong. Inflation's coming down. The labor market is very, very strong. So I find it hard to see a big recession. Whether there's 2 consecutive quarters of declining GDP, possibly, but it will be a weaker economy than it feels right now. So if you are a politician, and this time next year there is an election, as we all know, it's not going to feel great, I don't think. I think that will be my sort of big picture take. So has the Fed got it right? We put last year, perhaps a little prematurely, on the cover, the Fed that failed. I eat a little bit of humble pie there. I think the Fed that failed in letting inflation get to where it got to, but having taken too late to wake up, actually, this year has gone better than I would have predicted.
Okay, and I already made my first error. I forgot to say we can see the cover of the newspaper this week. So can we put those slides up? So there's going to be 2 of them. Do you want to?
Should I talk you through those?
Yeah.
So we have a split cover. And so in the UK, I'm afraid we have the depressing one, which is Putin winning in the UK and Europe, which is a really sobering take at how the Russian economy and Russian society has been transformed into a war machine. And I think with it, a couple of pieces about the things in Ukraine are looking great right now, and the loss of momentum for assistance from the US, and frankly the slight loss of momentum in Europe, makes me a little quite nervous about what's going on. The answer you will get in the editorial is that for now it looks as though Putin has more of an upper hand than we certainly would have hoped for, but it really is contingent on whether Europe develops a sense of strategic vision. And if the US stops assistance in the short term in Ukraine, and in the longer term, if Europe doesn't have a strategic vision of the importance for Ukraine, it's not looking good. The more upbeat one is blue collar bonanza, why conventional thinking on inequality is wrong. And we can perhaps talk about this, but it's a really interesting set of pieces which look at the fact that since the pandemic, and you probably know this, I mean, clearly, blue collar worker wages, so wages at the bottom end of the income distribution, have been rising strongly. We've got a really interesting piece that looks at, well, one, a free exchange, which looks at this debate over the inequality papers, and that there is now, a real debate about whether the Piketty-Sayers view of inequality was accurate, or so that's a sort of long-term look. But then an interesting look at how over the coming years, it's quite possible that we have the ingredients for a sustained blue-collar bonanza, as we put it. We have for sustained real wage growth. One is demographic. In the rich world, you really have demography hitting, and you just have a shortage of workers. And 2, that economies are being run hot. I mean, the US is running a 7% fiscal deficit outside of recession. I mean, it's just extraordinary. So the demand that's going to come from higher defense spending, the demand that comes from the green transition, there is going to be a lot of push for that. And the third, and I think this is a really interesting one, it's the most speculative, but I think really interesting. Clearly, the biggest sort of secular driver of labor markets going forward is going to be what is the impact of AI. And I think there's a strong evidence from the early sort of studies that are being done that contrary to the impact of digitization in the 80s and 90s, which really polarized the labor market, raised the returns to skill, this time around, actually AI can help people at the middle. And it turns out that there's some studies so far, you've probably seen them, that AI helps the kind of median worker. It essentially lifts people up so that your median worker becomes as good as somebody at the frontier. And if that's the case, then actually that coupled with strong demand means that this could really be a period of really quite strong wage growth. Wage compression, we've seen remarkable wage compression in the last couple of years. That would be really good news. Yeah. So that's the cover. There you go. Don't need to read it now.
Okay. Well, sure, there's more in there. Let's stay on the European case. So for those that don't follow this closely, one of the things that's been true ever since the euro was launched was this tension over not having a common fiscal policy along with a common monetary policy. And there have been various attempts to try to harmonize fiscal policy to a certain extent by not allowing countries to do like what the US is doing with these big deficits. So there have been all these rules around fiscal constraints. Last week, in a story that I don't think has gotten as much attention as it should have, at least amongst lots of outlets, the German Constitutional Court kind of slapped down the end run that the German government was trying to do to reappropriate some money that was going to be used, that was passed as a pandemic relief bill, was being unused, and they wanted to repurpose that money, and the court said no. Okay, now that puts German fiscal policy in a very difficult position where they're already probably in recession or close to it. So I want to hear what you think of that decision and where you think things are going with Germany.
So Germany's attitude to debt is symbolized by the fact that the word for debt, and my mum is German, so I'm allowed to say this, Schuld, is both guilt and debt. It's the same word. And that tells you something about what Germans think about debt. They have a completely wacko attitude to fiscal policy, in my view, not to put too fine a point on it. It is a country that just regards debt as being sort of deeply, deeply, deeply problematic. So the German constitutional, they put into the constitution the debt brake a few years ago. And the debt brake essentially limits, outside of an emergency, the fiscal deficit to 0.35% of GDP. Now, I am not generally a believer in fiscal rules being effective, because either you get around them, or if you stick to them, they tend to provide constraints at the wrong time. But this is a classic example of a sort of ill-conceived debt rule, because Germany is actually the one country in the advanced world that could usefully use a little more fiscal spending right now. Germany has terrible infrastructure. There's a kind of view out there that Germany has wonderful infrastructure. If you've been on a train in Germany recently, you will know that very few of them are on time. In fact, this is true. The Swiss are stopping trains from Germany at the border because they are so late that they are messing up the famously efficient Swiss timetables. So German infrastructure is creaking. Germany needs to spend more on its defense. It made a very big sort of fuss after, and rightly so, after the invasion of Ukraine, that there was going to be a Zeitenwende, a changing of the times, much more investment in military spending. And in fact, because of this constitutional rule, there was a special fund created to ensure that there could be this military spending could be increased. That hasn't actually really happened yet. But the result is that Germany actually has, I think Germany's debt to GDP ratio, fiscal debt to GDP ratio is 65%, which is about half of America's, 25 percentage points lower than most other countries in the EU. So it could usefully afford to be a little more fiscally expansionary. The German Constitutional Court is the sort of most orthodox of the most orthodox. It will not allow any breaking of the rules. And so the German coalition government, which is a complex coalition between the SPD, the Greens, and the FDP, is completely paralyzed at this point, because they had essentially passed this year's, or sort of organized this year's spending by, they were going to co-opt some money that had been put into a special COVID fund. And that got around the rules because it was a crisis. They hadn't spent it on that, so they were going to spend it on all kinds of green transition stuff. Constitutional Court said no. So now they need to decide, are they going to literally not do any of the investment they need to do? Are they going to pretend it's an emergency when it isn't? Or are they actually going to change the rules? And because this government is quite weak anyway, they're squabbling about it. And there's a, actually, I shouldn't talk to Americans about fake fiscal crises. You do, after all, have debt ceiling, which is even madder. But it is kind of almost becoming Congress-like in its madness.
Blow.
Underneath the, we do crazy things here too. So, but it's really interesting, because from a macroeconomic perspective, Germany is one of the few rich countries that has fiscal room. And for the euro area as a whole, Germany should be using its fiscal room right now. And Germany really needs more infrastructure spending and needs to spend on the green transition. And so it's stuck. So, they should change the rules, but that's easy to say and very hard to do.
Yeah. I'm not super optimistic about that, but we'll see. Okay, let's turn to the craziness here. The autumn budget statement just came out. Mr. Hunt decided he was going to cut taxes. Do you think that that's appropriate, and that the direction that the government's economic policy is going here, is broadly sensible, or would you rather see him?
So I think when we wrote about it, we said one cheer for Jeremy Hunt, and the notion of the government having I think the argument they made was that the government had fiscal room because inflation had come down. In fact, the opposite is true. It's because the OBR's forecasts were for higher inflation for longer that there is unexpected fiscal revenue because we have nominal thresholds for tax. And in a higher inflationary world, more people are pushed into higher thresholds, so that revenues went up. That was the underlying reason for the windfall. In a big picture sense, does the UK have room to cut taxes? I think actually not really. Again, our public services are creaking. I mean, our prisons are literally overflowing. There's a huge amount of area, sort of in the medium-term sense, area where public spending needs to rise. That said, if you are going to cut taxes, one of the things he did, which is continuing the full expensing, I think is actually a very pro-growth thing to do. And so I think that was a sensible tax reform. And I believe only Estonia and Latvia have permanent full expensing of investment spending. And the UK will be the first G7 country to do it. And that strikes me, for a country that has low investment, chronic productivity problem, actually a sensible thing to do. There were some other quite sensible things on welfare reform. We can talk about those. The other big tax cut was a cut in national insurance contributions, which, it's cutting taxes on labor, which if you're going to cut taxes on the income side is not so bad, but it's worth remembering that it actually reverses an increase that Rishi Sunak did when he was Chancellor. So, if you actually look at the direction of the Tories' approach to tax policy or to national insurance, they've kind of gone like this. They've basically increased it, reduced it, increased it, reduced it. So it's not a huge dramatic change. So it's a weird answer, because on the one hand, I don't think there's a lot of fiscal room to cut taxes in the UK, but I do think that actually full expensing being made permanent is, as part of an overall growth strategy, makes a lot of sense.
Do you think the UK is going to dodge a recession?
I mean, it depends again whether you mean a technical recession or not. I think the UK, it'll be sort of relatively sluggish next year. I think there are quite a lot of people whose mortgage interest payments are going to go up quite substantially. We're more insulated than we were. We don't have quite so many people on variable rate mortgages, but we have quite a lot. It's not going to feel great. But the UK, I think the real challenge is a medium-term challenge. We have a just chronic low productivity. And the thing that gives me there aren't that many things that give me huge optimism in the short term, although in the medium term, I'm pretty optimistic about the UK. But in the short term, the one thing that does seem to be happening, that on both sides, but driven by the Labour Party, there is now a focus on planning reform. And, builders, not blockers, is a great slogan. And this country needs to deal with planning reform. And that will be, and probably a Labour government is the one that has to do that, because there are too many NIMBYs in the Tory party. But if things like that can get done, then and plus the full and plus a number of others, I've got a whole long to-do list of productivity enhancing things. That's sort of what this country needs.
Yeah. I mean, is there any way Sunak can save his government, or do you think he's toast?
I'm going to answer this. I think the betting market, I tend to look at the betting markets, and I tend to think that markets know wisdom of crowds is good there. I also, the Tories have been in power a long time. Yeah. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Another recent election question, Argentina. Now,
are we going down the list of basket cases?
Yeah. Well, no, because we got one more next. But what do you think of the idea of trying to dollarize the economy when you don't even have the money to get the dollars?
Well, I think it's hard to do when you don't have the money to get the dollars, but I think that is going on the back burner very fast. As far as I can tell, since the election, the apparent constellation of the government and the people who actually look like they're running economic policy make me think that this is no longer kind of top of the agenda. I mean, I think Milei was he's a I've not met him. I can't wait to meet him. I mean, he's a fascinating character in lots of ways. What does he get his advice from his dog, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of interesting things about him, but his success is born of desperation and frustration. And the state of the Argentine economy is really sort of dramatically and secularly bad. And so it probably does need some quite radical measures, but I don't think dollarizing when you have no dollars is one of them. Dealing with the debt to the IMF, dealing with the size of the state and the subsidies is a whole bunch of stuff that needs to happen. It's sort of a tragic history, really, in economic terms. I mean, when I first wrote about emerging markets, when I first became a journalist, as you happily told everyone decades ago, in the mid-90s, Argentina was a great sort of hope. It was the privatizer, the deregulator, the kind of place that everyone was massively hopeful about. It was booming. Yeah. And it was like this. And now recently it's just gone down. So it does need fairly radical change, and it's been completely destroyed by the recent governments.
I don't know what the IMF was thinking when they made those loans, but $45 billion, I don't see how they're ever going to get that paid back.
And they're not in it will be, it may not be a formal, it won't be a formal default, but there'll be all kinds of, papering over extensions, blah, blah, blah. I mean, yes, but the IMF has, as my long time ago former employer, politics plays a role in some of those decisions. It's not all technocratic.
I think I can say this, but this is off the record, but
no, it's not.
No. What I'm about to say, I remember when Ragu came back from the IMF. So my colleague was the chief economist for the IMF, and I was berating him about some decision they made. He says, sometimes the IMF doesn't get to decide what the IMF does.
Can you imagine having your board with, I think it's 20-something directors who meet twice a week, and all of your board members themselves represent governments who all want to, it's a complete corporate governance nightmare.
Yeah, it's amazing. Anyway, all right, so here's the last country question. China. Seems like they're definitely slowing down. Do you think it's going to be extreme enough to have a first order impact on the rest of the world, or do you think they can just kind of go their way and struggle the way they're struggling without it really turning into a big problem for everybody else?
I think it will have a sort of ongoing impact on the rest of the world, but not a sort of dramatic causing financial crash, because the Chinese financial system is pretty insulated. It's already become somewhat essentially uninvestable. So it's really an impact on commodity prices, it's an impact on exports, it's big enough that it's an impact on overall demand. The growth has slowed. Do I think it's going to dramatically slow further from here? No. But China's got serious problems. And this time a year ago, I guess, one conventional view was that the US would see recession. Another conventional view was once China opened up, its economy would roar ahead as there was a massive amount of post-pandemic catch-up spending. And that's the bit that everyone got wrong. It hasn't happened. It hasn't happened in part because the housing bust is sort of deeper and bigger than people thought. It's had an impact, always having a huge impact on local government finances. There's also a sort of an impact from the uncertainty around what government policy is particularly towards high-profile entrepreneurs. I mean, the clampdown on whether it was the not teaching the blanking, when you're teaching people tutoring, the whole tutoring industry, suddenly clamped down. The high-tech area again clamped down. I mean, it is right now. President Xi is not focused on the economy. He's focused on other priorities, and it is that we don't quite know who's going to get locked up next. And the US export controls have had an impact, and so all of that has hit the economy. And then if you look out in the medium term, I think China's got some really big headwinds. Its demographic outlook is not good. I think there is it's not a perfect parallel in any way, but it is somewhat Japan-like, but it's happening
Yeah,
at
much
a
lower
much
level.
lower level of per capita GDP. Exactly. And so, there's this ongoing debate of when will China exceed the US economy at market exchange rates? And there was, again, a sort of conventional view that it was soaring ahead. I mean, I think it's perfectly possible that China never exceeds the US as a size of its economy at market exchange rates. And I think that's a really interesting and different medium-term trajectory. And frankly, it should influence the US debate a bit more, because this notion that the US is going to be eclipsed by this, terrifying, fast-growing economy, I think is not necessarily the case.
So I assume if I offered you a bet on 20 years from now, would you rather be India or China? You'd pick India?
Oh, yeah. I mean, to live, to be, to...
No, just, a GDP futures bet. I mean, just on...
GDP or GDP per capita?
Yeah, okay. I guess you got to do capita.
Exactly, yeah.
Capita, let's say. So
on 10 years?
20.
Ooh.
I just made this up. I don't know.
Yeah, India's still a lot poorer than China, but I think as a growth story, India's a very, very exciting potential growth story. I mean, that has always been the case, but it now really feels like, I don't know how, those of you who either come from or have been in India recently, it just feels as though this is a country kind of transforming in front of you. It's extraordinary.
I mean, I was shocked to see that there's this guy charged in New York for, the government possibly ordering an assassination.
Yeah, I was talking about the economy.
Yeah, I know. They're potentially connected.
There are some very alarming things going on in India too, and actually potentially alarming political direction could at some point undercut economic potential, which would be tragic.
Yeah, I hope not. I share your fear. You said a little bit about AI and how that's coming. What did you make of the whole open AI adventure? Did we learn anything? Was that just a totally bizarre thing?
There was a wonderful meme, and I can't remember which comedian did it, that you may have seen, about someone who made the point that it is extraordinary that in an industry that's all about AI taking everyone's jobs, that this company was so obsessed with one person and his job. There was a lot of quite interesting things from that. One, it suggests that whatever Sam Altman did that freaked out the erstwhile members of his board, lesson one, if you are bored and you are out of the blue sacking superstar CEO, at least have a PR strategy and explain why you're doing what you're doing. That was sort of very, very odd. It showed the power of engineers. It showed the power of the employees. I think that it has, in the end, is it going to have made much difference? No. It's probably strengthened his role. I think Microsoft played it very well. I'm really interested by the degree to which there is a sort of bifurcation. There are people who think, this is going to be completely terrifying. We're going to have AGI, and we're going to be slaves to these AIs, very, very short order. And then there's the it's going to be fine, and let's just get on with it and have open source, and let's let rip. And remarkably, I think, but I'm not a economic historian, actually. Maybe there's somebody at Chicago who's done this, but I think that we are having a lot of regulatory interest and regulatory focus and government concern quite a lot earlier in the sort of innovation and arrival of this new technology than we have done for other ones. I mean, it took quite a while for the FDA to be created after 20th century drugs started getting going. It took decades for there to be any serious regulation of cars. In the 1920s, lots of people were getting killed by these newfangled cars. And now we have AI, and essentially a year has gone since ChatGPT, arrived and everyone started freaking out. So I can't quite work out whether that is prudent precaution, or whether it is just because that we're sort of, remarkably early on this, and that actually we're a long, long way from AGI and a long, long way from too many things to worry about.
I happen to know this just totally randomly, but the White House actually has a task force that's looking into this. And one of the things they did was put out a call to industry to come up with, help us with 10 difficult issues on AI. And the challenges are huge. I mean, the industry wrote back and said, some of this stuff, it's not obvious at all, but there is somebody very senior in the administration that's just right on this. So I don't know if that's an accident, if it's just a pet project.
But it's interesting because there's two, there's one narrative is that, AI will take all of our jobs and that, there'll be, computers will do everything. And I have instilled in me, probably from some professor somewhat like you, the lump of labor fallacy is a fallacy, and there will be new jobs created. And I tend not to worry about that. And I also think it takes quite a long time for technology to diffuse, even transformative technology. So it was when was it? So the internet, really early 90s started.
Yeah.
By the late 2000s, I think it was the first time the majority of US companies had a website. I mean, it just takes a long time. Tractors were invented in the very beginning of the 20th century. The middle of the 20th century, the majority of farms still didn't have tractors in the US. So that diffusion isn't immediate. And secondly, but what I think has been really striking is that in the public debate, it's overwhelmingly seen AI as scary and dangerous. I had a conversation with my parents recently about AI, and they are not ChatGPT users. But what is this? It's terrifying. What is this thing? It's really, really dangerous. But actually, there is a narrative that this is going to accelerate or is accelerating drug discovery. It's quite possibly going to help us solve climate change. It might bring fusion technology much closer. There are all kinds of really transformative, positive things that AI could bring. And of course, there are risks. And of course, we need to manage the risks. And I'm not suggesting that the regulatory stuff is misguided. It's not. But I'm very struck that in the public debate, I think we're really focusing on the dangers and the negatives much, much more than on the potential upsides. And maybe that's prudent, but it's also possible that we sort of as a society maybe sort of focus too much on that.
Have you done any of these experiments of trying to get it to tell you facts? I mean, I was writing something and I wanted to find a quote that was, you'll remember this, there was, kind of folklore right after the financial crisis that there was, as long as you had the banks backstopped and they were safe, you didn't really need to worry about the non-banks. And as long as, the buck would stop with the banks. And so if you just took care of the banks, eventually for something to get out of control, it would have to tip over a bank. People said that kind of routinely. So I go to ChatGPT and I say, find me a quote like this, and it comes back and says, well, the Financial Crisis Inquiry Commission on page 84 said the following. It was essentially what I wanted. I go, wow, that's pretty cool. I happen to have the Financial Crisis Inquiry Commission report 3 feet from my, where I was sitting. I pick it up, I turn to page 84. Complete bullshit. It just made it up. Whole clap. It wasn't even about that part of the report. And so then I go, ChatGPT, why are you making stuff up? Well, I am just a large language model. You cannot.
I think everyone has their, favorite ChatGPT hallucinate story. Mine was very early on. I asked it who I was married to, and it got the wrong person. But having said that,
and you dated the guy at least.
No.
Husband's quite a famous author. We should have him back.
But it did. But it is amazingly useful. I don't know how much you now use large languages, but incredibly useful and incredibly productivity enhancing. And
so
anyone who writes a line of code.
So give me an example of where The Economist, in the course of a regular story, someone would use ChatGPT. I wouldn't trust the sources or anything.
So anybody who writes any code, which increasingly includes lots of my colleagues, you use it as a co-pilot. You help it. It's tremendous.
No, that's for sure.
You want to interrogate a long PDF. You ask natural language questions, you'll get answers. You want to. There are huge numbers of things that you can use it for. And I think we are thinking very seriously about how we everything you read in The Economist is written by a human and will continue to be written by a human. But there are ways we can improve our journalism. There are things that we can use it for. And there are ways I think the media landscape is going to change, and we need to think about what is Economist journalism and what is the delivery of that journalism in an AI-dominated world. And I think in 5 years' time, it'll be completely different. I mean, you and I, people still want to interact with humans, so we'll probably still have this conversation, but many other areas of it will be very different. Might be, for example, we could be talking here, and you could have this streamed instantaneously with us in 20 different languages, our voices. You can do that now, actually. But I mean, that's a remarkably powerful.
Yeah. That would be good. Okay, so I'm gonna, in 5 minutes, I'll stop and start taking questions to start thinking about what you want to ask. Let's close on climate change, and what's your outlook for that? It clearly requires a lot of coordination. It's not something the world's doing a very good job of these days. The climate skeptics in the United States are powerful and resistant in pretty deep ways. So how do you see things unfolding? You think we're going to have to come to the abyss and then adjust fast, or we just do nothing?
I'm not sure it requires a lot of coordination, if you mean by that international coordination. Yeah. I think what the COP process has done has sort of created a common understanding and created targets. But actually, I think in the progress has come from countries deciding that this is in their own interest to do, and sort of competitive nationalist approaches are actually getting us quite a long way. If you look, for example, at India, which has a tremendous investment in renewables now, that's not coming so much because of some sense of the COP. It's coming from a sense that actually it needs to make progress. And I think that I think we've come a long way. If you look at where the global warming, the track we were on and the track we are now on, if the pledges that have been made thus far are fulfilled, we've actually slowed the pace of warming quite a lot. Are we going to hit 1.5? No, it's going to be more than that. Are we therefore going to have to focus more on adaptation? Yes. Are we seeing some recognition that will require much more financing to the less developed world? Yes. Is the money there yet? Not enough of it, but there's some, and I think there's been a little bit of progress just today, actually. Do we, in the end, though, are we going to have to rely on two things we haven't talked enough about? One is carbon capture. No. I think a lot, because fossil fuels are going to be part of the fuel mix for quite a long time. Yeah. Carbon capture, we don't talk about enough, like adaptation. It's still prohibitively expensive. Innovation, I think, will help there, and is helping. And I think for me, the reason I'm sort of, I hope, a kind of clear-eyed climate optimist, in that I think we are seeing an attention and focus now, and we are seeing innovation that means that over the next few years, and innovation is needed both to adapt, but also to accelerate the passage to net zero and then to do carbon withdrawal. And I think we're going to have to start looking seriously at things that thus far have just been written about in the science pages of The Economist, things like solar geoengineering too. There will be, we will need to look at all of those things, but I think the pace of innovation has really accelerated here. So I don't think we're going to hit this through some diplomatic process. I think this is going to be when countries see it as being in their own interest to do it, which they are increasingly doing. And I think one of you see it again and again, the politics of this changes when it becomes expensive, hard to do, and people feel like they are paying an excessive price, then the politics switches. So Germany is really interesting. Germany essentially accelerated everybody else's solar transition by massively subsidizing solar power, from a long time ago. And Germany is not a particularly sunny country. It was a kind of huge sort of gift to the rest of the world. Now, this current government wanted to accelerate the move to electric heat pumps and so forth. And there was a kind of mandated, this will all need to happen very fast. And there's been a huge political backlash. And I think the balance is going to be maintaining the political support for the transition, which means making it cheap, making it easy for consumers to shift, and at the same time accelerating the pace of innovation. And so I think the single biggest thing that's happened in the last year has been the huge subsidies in the IRA, particularly for basic research, which is the most sensible one. There's a lot of distorted things about the IRA that I don't think are great, but the US pumping that much money into renewables and building the kind of infrastructure for it is a huge
and done in a clever way by putting a lot into red states so that it's not going to be easy to pick.
75% goes into red states. So I'm afraid the administration isn't going to get a lot of credit for it, but it's been a great thing to do. And it will be hard to unwind even for a future Republican administration. But I think once you have big subsidies, it's just hard to get rid of them.
Yes, I agree. All right, we can take a few questions. So if you'd like to ask a question, raise your hand. We'll bring a mic around. Give us your name, and I'm going to collect 2 or 3, and then we'll do a second round. So, Abby.
Hi, John Busby. Very interesting conversation. Talking about fossil fuels, it seems to me, I'll make a statement and I'll ask a question. It seems to me that the whole debate is about the burning of fossil fuels, but there doesn't seem to be anything about what other things oil is. Everything here is in one way or another composed of fossil fuel, of oil. So what's your thought about if you're going to get rid of oil, if you just stop oil, what are you going to do about the materials?
Do you want me to ask that, or do you want to go for it?
Let's collect a couple and then.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Johannes Busse, my name. Inflation, what do you think will be happening there? Do you think structural labor shortage in developed markets will keep inflation higher for longer? Or do you think central banks can ever reach again in the short term the 2% target? Thank you.
Okay, those are 2 meaty questions. Let's take those 2 and then we'll go.
So the first question, I think fossil fuels will be part of the mix for decades, for precisely the reason that you give, which is that even if even if our transport is completely electrified, even if our energy, our sort of lighting is totally electrified, there are, I think, plastics, all of these embedded, they require fossil fuels and will continue to do so. That's why I think carbon capture is essential, and eventually carbon withdrawal from the atmosphere is going to be, so the net balance can be 0, but it's a net balance. So I agree with you. And even in areas of transportation, I mean, aviation fuel, despite the fact that there was much hoopla around the first sustainable aviation flight to New York from whatever it was, waste fat or something, it's not going to be, as far everything I've read suggests that it's going to be very, very hard to decarbonize aviation. So there are going to be areas that will not be decarbonized. And it's also why I think the kind of end fossil fuel as a slogan, it radically simplifies where we are. And I also find it sometimes, the sort of oversimplification of this. So you have, the European green lobby saying we will no longer fund any fossil fuel investments in developing countries. So, LNG or gas-powered electric plants in Africa are not being funded because they're gas-powered, even though gas-powered is much better than coal-powered. So there's a lot of, let's not make the perfect be the enemy of the good, and let's try and work on a way, which is, again, why I think actually this COP, and again, much hoopla around there being a COP at the UAE and a big oil producer and so forth. In some ways, I think having a fox and hen house thing it may be applicable here. Actually, having a big oil producer means that this may we may get a deal on methane, and getting a deal on eliminating or radically cutting methane emissions in the next 10 years with all the national oil companies signing up would be a really big step forward. I think you make progress in sort of bold but realistic steps. Inflation, sort of quick answer to your question is I don't think we're going to get to 2% anytime soon. And I also don't think we should necessarily get to 2% anytime soon. Whisper it quietly. There were some real problems with nominal rates at the zero lower bound. It would be nice not to have that again. I think headline will do all kinds of things depending on the oil price, but underlying core price pressure looks like it's sort of between 3 and 4. It's going to be very hard to get it to 2. And Germany may drive the ECB to do crazy things, but certainly in the US context, I would be quite surprised if the Fed behaved in a way that it was optimizing for getting to 2 come hell or high water fast. There would be they'll call it opportunistic disinflation or something, and it'll take.
I mean, why they closed the door to that, I have no idea. I mean, they believe this model where communications and anchoring expectations is the key to everything. Okay, and that's, I'm sure, why they swear on a stack of Bibles, we're getting to 2, we're getting to 2. We can never doubt my conviction to get to 2, I will get to 2. But that view of the world can't explain how inflation got up in the first place. So now why you would be turning to that framework to try to tie your hands is just bizarre to me. But I agree with you. I think the last mile is going to be very painful. But I think that they have boxed themselves in, so they're going to keep interest rates up. I think they're not going to
keep them. They may not cut as fast or as much as people would like, but I'd be surprised if they carried on raising.
Yeah, that's probably right. Okay, we can maybe take a couple more questions. Okay.
Hi, Jonathan Kramer. My question is, sitting here in the UK, it seems like from looking at statistics that the US economy is doing all right, but we also pick up that people in the US don't feel like it is. And that could have some pretty profound political implications next year. So how do we square that in terms of what looks like it's doing okay, but people are not feeling like it's doing okay?
It's a really good question. It's one that actually in this cover this week we sort of write about a bit. I'll give you some thoughts as to why that. One, people say the US economy is not doing well when you look at actual individual spending patterns, they're not behaving. They are spending really quite a lot. Consumption is quite strong. Two, we have seen cumulatively a lot of inflation since 2021, and that is a phenomenon that is relatively unusual for most people in the US. It's not literally not since the Carter presidency have nominal prices gone up this much. And so even if in real terms you're not much worse off because you have had wage gains, you just sense prices are higher. When I go to New York now, I'm like, oh God, this city is so expensive. I mean, it's insanely expensive here. So there's a little bit of that. I think prices keep going up. My grocery bill is X and it was a lot less 2 years ago. And then there's and this is a more speculative thing, but there's a really interesting set of literature, you probably know much better than I do, that people's view of the economy is increasingly shaped both by their partisan political persuasion, but also by their kind of political sense.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things in the US is a very angry place right now. The US is a place where a lot of things, people are fearful, whatever side you're on, people are fearful of what's going to happen next year. And things like uncontrolled immigration, what's happening at the border, what's happening in big cities, crime, people feel like discombobulated. And so I think that goes a little bit into this. And I was struck, I was listening to, we have this podcast called Money Talks, which is, for those of you who don't listen to it, I recommend, really excellent weekly podcast on business and finance. But there was an episode a couple of weeks ago by a colleague of mine who drove through the kind of heartland of America where a lot of this IRA investment has been. And he went to a town, I can't remember the name of it, small town where I think Panasonic is building a huge battery factory, or one of the big companies is. And this tiny place in the middle of red state America is being completely transformed because of the money from the IRA. But there were a number of people, someone sticks in my mind, was interviewed by him on this podcast. And my colleague said, do you think President Biden, deserves the credit for this? And this chap said, no, I don't think so. Absolutely not. And it was a kind of way in which people's perception of where the credit should go is driven by things other than, it's driven by their political views. And I think that's, it's very striking. And I think particularly for this administration, who clearly they coined Bidenomics and they wanted to focus because they wanted the president to get credit for this. It doesn't seem to be working. I mean, the poll, I was looking the other day, the polling on the President Biden's handling of the economy is just getting worse and worse and worse. It's not getting any better.
Well, one of my colleagues had a good take on this. He goes, yeah, like I'm an economist, I can compute my real wage and all that, but I go into the grocery store and I see Cheerios cost $8 and it just pisses me off.
I slightly have the same thing when I go and have, if you go for breakfast in New York and you're bankrupt. I mean, I still have sort of sticker shock. I mean, we've had in fact inflation rates here has been higher, but the combination of the weakness of the pound, the inflation in the US, it's just jaw dropping. You go, what you're paying now for you.
Yeah. Well, I'm mindful of time, right? We're supposed to stop now. So let's go ahead. One more question. Okay, we've got room for one more.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Aaron Kelshika. I'd like to talk about the UN SDGs and obviously the 2030 agenda. We're sort of halfway there at the moment. The latest progress reports talk about only 12% of the UN SDGs being on track. I think the report talks about stagnation in the face of multiple crises. It'd be great to get your thoughts on how effective the UN SDGs have been. Thanks very much.
I think you've answered your own question. I mean, not very, right? There were a lot of them. There was just as a kind of, if you want to have goals that have some hope of being politically galvanizing and reached, having quite as many as they did with sub-clauses for each of them, it might not be perhaps the way to go about it. And it's also a function of a UN system that is itself falling victim to a fractured multipolar world where there's Sino-US conflict, and now the UN, Russian invasion of Ukraine has made the UN ineffective in lots of other areas. So I think it's less that there hasn't been enough attention placed to every single one of those, because I think there's been progress in quite a lot of them, but there were an awful lot of goals, and the UN system just isn't working terribly well right now. That doesn't mean, I don't think, that on the most, not just on climate, where I think there really has been progress, but deep sea, there's been quite a lot of progress on things on the sea. There's been progress on sort of important areas. There has been progress. So I don't want to kind of fall into this sort of, oh, it's all catastrophic because the UN, we're not going to make it to the UN SDGs. In the grand, I'm going to put on my sort of Steven Pinker hat, but in the grander scheme of things, in lots of areas, at least until the pandemic, huge progress was made in terms of quality of life and human development. Pandemic set a lot back, an awful lot. And whether it's poverty measures, whether it's educational measures, there's an awful lot of globally that took a big hit, and we've got some catching up to do from that. Do we therefore sort of say it's all catastrophic? No, I think the answer is to keep plugging away and making progress. And I'm actually, I'd like to we can end where we started. I think that AI offers us just enormous potential, and harnessed properly. If we get it wrong, it can no doubt be catastrophic. But if we get it right, this is a kind of Hail Mary for the 21st century. We can really make massive progress in many of these areas. And so I'm, on balance, despite the fact that the world around us is a complete mess in many ways, I'm actually quite optimistic.
Okay, well, that's a great note to end on. Let me thank Zanny. So this is the last one of these in the series for the 125th anniversary. But for those of you that are alums, let me plug one other idea, which is we've done the way we do class reunions and the management conference. And so if you haven't been back to one of your class reunions, it's a much better run, much more organized and interesting event. It kicks off with the management conference. This is the biggest event Booth puts on. Next year, Paul Singer of Elliott Management will be the keynote speaker, and we'll have a bunch of our top faculty running sessions in the afternoon. So I put in a hearty plug to continue, if you like this kind of thing, try to make it to Chicago. I don't know what the date is. It's like at least April 29th or May 3rd. Okay, so it's May 3rd. So and you come for Friday, there's class dinner, you can then, spend Saturday with doing fun stuff. There's a few back to class opportunities as well. So anyway, that's my one plug. So
and just a few comments from me to round out the evening. Again, thank you to Zanny, Minton, Beddoes, and Professor Kashyap. I hope you all agree, just a fantastic dialogue. I know the conversation and the questions should go on, or could go on, but hope you agree it's a wonderful way to close out the 125th celebrations, at least on the London campus. And in reflecting on these 125 years, we're certainly proud of the many accomplishments of our faculty, our alumni, our student and our staff communities. We're also very thankful to everyone who have contributed, all those contributed to the legacy in the past, and certainly to all of you who continue to engage with us and support Chicago Booth, the many great things that we hope to build for the future. 2 final points as you head up the stairs to the networking reception. We hope you will join us there. If you are new to the campus, you will see the wonderful display of Nobel laureates on the stairwell, 99 of them. 2 not yet up because they're from this year's awards, but there are 99 Nobel laureates affiliated with either the university or Chicago Booth, 4 currently on the Chicago Booth teaching faculty. So we're just very honored that those are just a reflection of part of that 125 years, which is Booth and the college even longer. And then secondly, we certainly invite you to enjoy, there's an amazing art collection on campus, and that is on loan to us from Felix Robbins and his wife, Katie. Felix is one of our alums. He's over there. Katie may be here or may be joining us later, but we're very fortunate to have that. There's a website. And Zanny mentioned a podcast. We are also launching a little mini podcast series on the art collection. Felix and Katie are interviewed. You'll hear about their passion for art, why they decided to loan the collection, part of their collection, to the London campus here. And then if you've been to our other campuses in Chicago and in Hong Kong, you know that art collections feature there. And one of our economics professors, Canis Prendergast, is the keeper of the collections across the campuses. He's interviewed as well, as are some of the artists, and you'll get a sense of why we see art and those collections as really an extension of the innovative way that we approach at Booth and the university, just that expansion, enhancing of knowledge and education. And so that's a nice mini series, and then we hope to add more to that. So finally, just thank you again. Thank you for being here. Please enjoy the evening upstairs, continue the conversation and the questions, and join me in one final round of applause for Zanny and Professor Kashyap.